Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll join with me in 1 minute of silence to remember the fallen, the prisoners of war, the missing in action, and to honor those who have served and are currently serving the armed forces of this great nation. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand as you can, and if there are others that feel they need to sit, there are plenty of seats up front, so if you do need to have a seat, there are plenty of seats up here, so please take advantage of them. Please stand while we post the colors and remain standing for the national anthem sung by Charles Moore. Color Guard, post the colors.
So gallantly streaming, and the rockets were clear, the bumpers sing in air, gay through the night, that our flag was still there. That star
Thank you, Charles, very much. You may be seated if you have a chair. And again, if there's someone out there that does need seating, there are seats up here in the front. Please make use of them. But you're either sitting and falling down. So I'd like to make a few acknowledgments if I can before we get in the middle of it. Out of sight and out of mind, I think unfortunately describes the staff at this and most national cemeteries. Many of us may see what Gloria Bailey and her staff do, and they might think it is mundane, routine, and in some ways not very important. I would not be one of those people. It couldn't be farther from the truth. Every day, each and every day, they are the sentinels and guardians of our nation's heroes. They care for and watch over them and the grounds they reside as if they were guarding our nation's capital, and in doing so represent to the world one of our nation's noblest characteristics. And it's how we care for and remember our veterans. Calvin Coolidge once said, "The nation which forgets the defenders will also soon be forgotten." And I don't think Gloria's here today, but is Christine and your staff? Where are you? If you're here handy, I just want to make sure that you guys get noticed, and you guys do an outstanding job, and thank you very much. Gold Star service flags. Some of you may have seen these here and about. Some of you obviously do know, but all of you may not know what these flags mean. And originally, it came popularity in World War II to acknowledge a family's involvement in wartime activity. As a military member deploys, a part of that family is missing. Schedules change, birthdays, anniversaries, and other significant moments are missed. So obviously more than just the military member is affected. For every child that a mother has serving in combat, a blue star is placed on the service flag, with an additional star for every individual that is serving in that family. If a child is unfortunately killed in action, the blue star is replaced by a gold star. Traditionally, the gold star is placed over top of that blue star so that it's highlighted. During Korea and Vietnam, these flags fell out of favor, but thankfully this tradition has been revived with the conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. There are articles out there you can read on that, but your best bet is to get with a gold star mom or blue star mom and talk to them. And what I'd like to say is to our gold and blue star moms that are here with us today, we appreciate your sacrifice and thank you for your loved ones' service and sacrifice they have made or are making. And thank you for bearing the burden for this nation's freedom. Our focus this year was to be for wounded and disabled veterans. And Theodore Roosevelt said, "A man who is good enough to shed his blood for the country is good enough to be given a square deal afterwards." And as we draw down our forces and our war fighters are coming home, it is important to also remember those that came home earlier, whether it be from World War II or Iraq and Afghanistan. Some bearing unmistakable scars and maladies from the service to this country, some with not so visible scars, but still just as wounded. Some have been combat scarred, some just worn and weary from a lifetime of service to the country. These individuals are owed a debt of gratitude and should be honored as the heroes they are. Some got their victory parade or homecoming and others did not. But today and every day going forward, we should acknowledge their service, sacrifice, and selflessness helping hand when needed, not as charity, but as a courtesy bestowed by a grateful nation. I thank all of our wounded and disabled veterans for making the trip to the cemetery today, both to be recognized but also to honor their fellow fallen comrades. Please take a moment today and give these servicemen and women an extra thank you and spend some time with them and learn about the challenges they face every day and their victories, some large and some small, they continue to always achieve. We are gathered here today at this memorial site and memorial sites all across America to remember that we are one nation with one flag. We are all proud to be Americans that live in a free society made up of many people, many races, for many walks of life. The freedoms we enjoy today have not come without a price. Lying here before us in cemeteries throughout this nation and some overseas are men and women who gave their lives so that we can live in freedom and without fear. We can worship as we see fit. We can raise our children to believe as we do. We can travel from one end of this great nation to the other without asking for permission. We are free to vote for whomever we feel should be in office and answer to no one but our own feelings. We have the right to succeed or the right to fail at whatever endeavor we wish to pursue. The United States of America was founded on the ideals of freedom, justice, and equality. Our nation stands as a shining beacon of liberty and freedom to the world. We thank those who gave their lives and keep us free, and we shall never forget. We shall always remember. Today, many of you here are veterans of wars and conflicts that America has had to fight and to protect the innocent and oppressed. America has always been the first nation to stand up for the freedom of people around the world. Many of you here today have answered that call and served your country well. And for that, we need to say, and I would like to say, thank you. We're honored to know you. There are many men and women serving today in all branches of the military here at home, in places far away, and names you've never heard of before. These men and women are part of the best trained, best equipped military in the world. We honor them and their families for the sacrifices they make each and every day to keep this country safe from terrorism, hatred, and injustice that plague the world community. When you see a veteran or an active duty member, take a moment to say thank you. We owe them our way of life, and a moment of your time will always be well spent. Quoting the 40th President of the United States, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in our bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like to live in the United States when men were free. Today we show a united front of national unity all across the United States for America as we remember the fallen, honor those who serve, and teach our children the value of freedom. Present arms. Present arms. Now, Staff Sergeant Pope will lay a remembrance wreath, holiday wreath, in memory of Private First Class Clarence Burrell Craft, Medal of Honor winner, World War II, and Private First Class Edward L. Ritchie, and all those who served and are serving in the United States Army. Now, Petty Officer Michael Stewart will lay a remembrance wreath in memory of Hospital Corpsman 3rd Class Beatrice Lindsay and all those who served and are serving in the United States Navy. Now, Master Sergeant Harvey, United States Army, will lay a remembrance wreath in memory of Corporal Chad S. Wade and all of those who served or are currently serving in the United States Marine Corps. Now, Captain Krebs will lay a remembrance wreath in memory of Lieutenant Colonel Casey James Land and Master Sergeant James Leroy Quinn and all those who served and are currently serving in the United States Air Force. Now, Commander David Waldrop will lay a remembrance wreath in memory of Steward's Mate 2nd Class Raymond C. Wilkie and all those who served and are currently serving in the United States Coast Guard. Now, State Representative Charlie Collins will lay a remembrance wreath in memory of Thomas Perry Shaw and those who served or are currently serving in the United States Merchant Marine. At this time, we'll take a moment. I'd like to introduce Captain Krebs from the University of Arkansas Honor Guard, ROTC Honor Guard, to do the POWMIA ceremony.
You may have noticed a small table here in the place of honor. It is set for one. This table is our way of symbolizing the acts that members of our profession of arms are missing from our midst. They're commonly called POWs or MIAs. We call them brothers and sisters. They're unable to be with us this day, and so we remember them. Let us remember the United States Army, honored by Cadet Bryant. Let us remember the United States Marine Corps, honored by Cadet Simone. Let us remember the United States Navy, honored by Cadet Houck. Let us remember the United States Air Force, honored by Cadet Hutchins. This table, set for one, is small. It symbolizes the frailty of one prisoner against his oppressors. The tablecloth is white, symbolizing the purity of their intentions to respond to the country's call to arms. The single rose displayed in the vase reminds us of the families and loved ones of our comrades in arms who keep faith, awaiting their return. The yellow ribbon, tied so prominently on the vase, is reminiscent of the yellow ribbon worn upon the lapel and breast of thousands who bear witness to their unyielding determination to demand a proper accounting for our missing. A slice of lemon is on the bread plate to remind us of their bitter fate. There is salt on the bread plate, symbolic of the tears of the families who wait. The glass is inverted. They cannot toast with us today. The chair is empty. They are not here. Remember, all of you who served with them and called them comrades, who depend on their might and aid and relied upon them, for surely they have not forsaken you.
And now our representative for our veterans, Hillbilly, will lay a remembrance wreath in honor of the 93,129 United States servicemen from all branches of the service whose last known status was either prisoner of war or missing in action. These individuals have never returned to their families and homes, and we shall never forget you. The wreaths before you represent our commitment as a united America to remember the fallen. We also want these holiday wreaths to symbolize our honor to those who have served and are serving in the armed forces of our great nation and to their families, who endure sacrifices every day on our behalf. To our children, we want you to understand the freedoms you enjoy today have not been free, but have come with a cost that someday you may also have to pay yourself. As a nation standing together, we can defeat terrorism, hatred, and injustice. Thanks to our veterans, we have the freedom to do just that. We could quote statistics of individuals buried around the cemetery, around the country, but at the end of the day, all you'd have is a bunch of numbers. What I would suggest to you today is to write down the information of a person, place there. When you return home, research that name and see what you find about those individuals. You'll find that they are real Americans with real families, that they are mothers or fathers, sons or daughters, brothers or sisters. They are more than just a statistic. And thank you. Our guest speaker this morning, originally from Middleton, Delaware, she received her Bachelor of Science in Home Economics from the University of Delaware. Ruth's son, Christopher, was deployed as an Army Ranger, closely following the September 11th attacks. A specialist stone cipher was killed in action during Operation Enduring Freedom, and his loss to her compelled Ruth to become dynamically involved with the American Gold Star Moms. She began her journey with the organization, helping with newsletter and website publications, and served as a national president from 2009 to 2010, and was responsible for initiating many initiatives, license plates in Pennsylvania, and started a campaign. Every state in the nation has some form of Gold Star activity. Ladies and gentlemen, Ruth Stonecipher.
It is an awful name to spell when you're ordering pizza, too. So, we gather here today to lay a tribute to those who have served our country in the armed forces. Because the Wreaths Across America mission statement is honor, remember, and teach, I would like to briefly illustrate each with a story. The first is my own teachable moment about my involvement with Wreaths Across America, then one about my son for remember, and finally reflections on honor. My son Chris was killed just 38 days after 9/11, when our country started major military operations in Afghanistan. As I worked through my grief, I joined the American Gold Star Mothers, volunteering to edit the organization's newsletter. At Christmas time, I needed to find an image to illustrate the last issue of the year. I remembered getting an email message with this wonderful picture of the Arlington tombstones with the snow and the wreaths and the red bows. That was the very lasting image that must have inspired a lot of us to come here today. Sorry. Well, I have to confess, I lifted it and used it in our magazine, and then had us totally stay awake at night with second thoughts about copyright infringements. My only comfort was thinking that they probably won't sue the American Gold Star Mothers. It might have been a real PR nightmare for them, you know, harassing those poor moms. 2 years later, when I met Maura Worcester and confessed my crime, He said they had lifted it also. We had a good laugh because the service member who was wandering through the cemetery and took that picture gave it to the world willingly, and we are all better for seeing it. But on a more serious note, somewhere in our healing process, many of us as Gold Star mothers experience moments of panic that our sons and daughters will be forgotten. We place memory markers to permanently verify the existence and passage of those bright spirits, the children whom we gave life and who once filled our hearts with hope and joy. Many of us write down the family stories, and some tell them over and over again as a way to keep our loved ones alive in our thoughts. I would like to tell you one about my son. Chris walked down a different path in life than most. He grew up in a world of Star Wars, read fine literature with delight, and wrote in journals his complex thoughts about life. He found himself drawn to the study of philosophy at the University of Delaware. However, after 2 years on the dean's list, he chose a more creative path of study, one where he chose and did everything in his power to avoid joining the establishment and the typical 9-to-5 job. The Native American culture was a particular focus for him to study, learning to track and survival skills to meet his goal of going into the wilderness for a period of 1 year with just a knife. His hobby became his passion. Some of my fondest memories of Chris have to do with him coming home from time spent at a survival school in the New Jersey Pine Barrens. These week-long classes taught students how to live off the land and create their own tools for survival. Chris learned several methods of making fire, building shelters using forest debris, tracking animals, and foraging for food. His definition of the ultimate job would have been to become an Indian scout before Columbus ever set foot on our new world. He spent a great deal of time practicing one particular skill, walking through the woods without making any noise, stepping over dried leaves and twigs, sometimes barefoot and blindfolded, relying on his other senses to detect and avoid obstacles. The ultimate goal, he said, was to sneak up on a deer without being detected and then touch it before it knew it was being stalked. You would have assumed Chris was quite young when he took up this hobby, perhaps 12 or so, wandering around the woods without shoes. Actually, he was about 22. One of the things I admired about Chris was his youthful passion to learn skills that some might describe as ridiculous and useless, but he found unique and fascinating. Chris was never concerned by what others thought about his pursuits. One day, he came home from a walk at the Peace Valley Nature Center near where we live and said quietly, "Hey, Mom, I did the deer thing." I said, "Great, tell me about it." And he hesitated and said, "Well, it probably didn't count." And then he explained to me that the deer that he got close enough to touch was an actual young fawn. And I said, "Well, that counts." And he said, "Well," then he had to confess to me that the fawn was sound asleep. He spotted it curled up on a high embankment near a small stream. Chris said he crept silently through the stream bed until he was less than 6 inches nose to nose. My son watched and waited, still and patient, until the fawn woke on his own, opening his huge eyes to find Chris's face well within his comfort zone. The baby deer stared for a long time, looking eye to eye at my smiling son and remembering to get up, and finally looked for his mother's familiar face. Chris said he giggled out loud as the fawn stumbled into the woods. Chris told this story with such a twinkle in his eye. He understood completely the gift he had been given that day, so I gave him the Sleeping Fawn Merit Badge, even though he never reached out and actually disturbed the young deer. Chris learned to walk and use his body with confidence and grace. It was all coming together, the 75th Ranger Battalion training, his natural abilities. On his last visit home, I noticed that when he walked through the living room to sit and talk, I never heard his shoes touch the floor. I only sensed the motion as he moved smoothly past my chair. He was like an owl taking flight, guiding effortlessly and silently through the air. Chris's best friend Luke explained to me after my son's funeral that the real test of an Apache Indian scout was to be able to sneak up, swat the bear on the behind, and run like the wind. While that image intrigues me, I prefer to remember my son as the sort of person who would not disturb a living thing for a thrill. I remember him as a man with a childlike wonder, graceful, independent, and mesmerized by the miracle of a small, vulnerable animal resting peacefully in the forest. This is just one of those stories our family tells and brings us a smile. I hope you will remember my Chris with a smile. And a final word in the Wreath Across America mission statement is honor. I take great comfort in the knowledge that our country strives to preserve the memory of all our children who went to serve their country and did not return. This tradition is rooted in something George Washington wrote 2 centuries ago. Quote, "The willingness with which our young people are likely to serve in any war, no matter how justified, shall be directly proportional as to how they perceive the veterans of earlier wars were treated and appreciated by their nation." The real learning experience, aside from the copyright dilemma I obsessed about, came from my first experience at Arlington, watching a young mother and child push a baby buggy with a wreath in it up a hill and finally place it on a tombstone. As I watched her help her child place the wreath and gently touch the face of the stone, reading the name to her child and where he had served, my mind contemplated that someday when I am long gone and the letters are all worn down on my son's marker, a mother and child will climb the same hill that I do now and place a tribute and remember my son. That is what we are about to do today. Honor these great men and women who went into harm's way to protect our freedoms. Today you are a part of a grateful nation who remembers men and women who served and are buried in this hollow ground. Thank you for coming and participating. Honor, remember, and teach.
I'd like to have Merle Williams come up front. They'll have a quick presentation to be made.
Good morning. The Regional National Cemetery Improvement Corporation is a group of civilians who for the past 30 years have been purchasing land all around the cemetery and donating it to the Veterans Administration so that the cemetery could continue to bury our veterans. Today, we receive our money generally through activities such as races and donations from individuals and groups. And today we have a consortium of 3 groups who have come together to present our president, Ron Butler, with a check for $5,000. And that group is, Steve Reel, who is the commander of the Combat Veterans Motorcycle Association, and Jamie Bibb, who is with Bo's Blessing, and we also have a 3rd group, which is the Military Order of the Purple Heart, Jose Martinez, who couldn't be with us today. He's at another function similar to this one. So, Ron, if you'll go ahead and do the presentation, please. I think Ron had a couple of words he wanted to say.
This is just totally wonderful. It's difficult to gather a bunch of money, and money seems like a nebulous thing. But that's what we use to buy land, to keep expanding this national cemetery so it never runs out of space for our veterans. So on behalf of all the members of the Regional National Cemetery Improvement Corporation, we thank you ever so much for everybody that does anything for us. Thank you very much.
All right, good morning. I'm going to be very brief. One, I want to thank you all for being out here. It's great to be part of a community like Northwest Arkansas that honors its nation's veteran and military families so well. Bottom line, as we depart to lay wreaths, remember today is about one thing. It's not about any group or groups, but it's about the word honor. Honor the brave and more often than not, very young men and women that have willingly stood up in harm's way for all of us to enjoy this cold weather on a beautiful wintry day that we have here today. So I have the task of dividing up this big group into 6 smaller groups. If you can imagine, the flagpole behind me and the circle that we're all standing in is kind of the center of the hub of the wheel. There's going to be 4 big pieces of pie, 2 to the front, 2 to the back. There's another section down past the Walmart truck and another section directly behind us. I'd ask that when we let you go here, you move to one of those 6 areas. And just a couple of reminders. Once you get there, there should be someone that is a section leader that will show you how to lay a wreath and render a proper military salute. Once you're down there, we'd ask that you remember it's not a race. We want to let our people that have family members that are laid to rest out here go first to honor their veteran. Next, all the veterans that are here to go honor a veteran. And then after that, all of the volunteers that came out. So once again, on behalf of the National Cemetery, the Civil Air Patrol, and Wreaths Across America, thank you all so much for being here, and have a great day.